So, Bobby, we had to take a break, but you were explaining the two laws that have existed through the ages in terms of property, and one of them being the private property nuisance laws. You can't do something that's going to impair the enjoyment or the use of other, or interfere with the enjoyment or use of other people's property in terms of private property, and the notion of public property, ancient laws that have been passed down through Rome in response to what happened prior to the Dark Ages in Europe. And so where are we now?
That second group is called the public trust doctrine, and it protects the commons, the publicly owned lands. And what I was saying, that King John in England began privatizing the commons, and this always happens in tyrannies. And he privatized the fisheries and sold monopolies and privatized the rivers of England, and so you couldn't navigate on them without paying a toll to a rich person. This caused the public to rise up. You couldn't hunt the deer, and they confronted King John at the Battle of Runnymede, and they forced him to sign the Magna Carta, which was the beginning of constitutional democracy on this planet. And the Magna Carta was the birthplace of all of our civil rights, all the rights in the Bill of Rights, including habeas corpus and, all of these other rights. But it also, in addition, had two chapters on protection of the commons, of the air, the water, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, that they belong to the people, that a ruler could not interfere with their use and enjoyment. Those laws descended to the people of the states when we had the revolution in our country, those rights, and the Constitution of every state basically says the water and the air of the state belong to the people. Everybody has a right to use them. Nobody can use them in a way that will diminish or injure their use and enjoyment by others. So this is ancient law, and a lot of times I'll sit across the table from a polluter who says, oh, it's not fair for you to impose these laws on us. These were invented by a bunch of hippies after Earth Day, and, we're having trouble complying with them. But in fact, these laws, the protection of the environment, have existed since the beginning of government. And in fact, in the 1600s, there was a Clean Air Act in England that made it illegal to burn coal in stoves in London, and it was a capital crime, and people were executed for it. So, these laws have been around forever. You've never been able to use your property in a way that pollutes. Pollution has always been illegal. And after Earth Day 19, a lot of these laws were eroded by corruption and by compliant legislatures at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And in Earth Day 1970, the largest demonstration in American history, 20 million Americans, 10% of our population, came out onto the street and said, we want those laws back. And it frightened the politicians, Republicans and Democrats, and Nixon created EPA. Signed their 28 laws were passed over the next 10 years that protect our air, water, endangered species, food safety, etc., wetlands, aquifers, beaches. But all those laws weren't new laws. They were simply the recodification of ancient laws that had existed for thousands of years. And, today, when you hear libertarians talk, the followers of Rand Paul who say everything should be free market capitalism. Well, I agree. I really believe that the free market works when it is harnessed to a social purpose. There's no such thing as the free market is a tool. It's like a hammer. You don't worship a hammer. You use it to build something that's good for your children. And the free market is the most powerful economic engine ever created, ever devised, but it has to be harnessed to a social purpose. Otherwise, it just creates inexorably oligarchy and plutocracy. And so you have to say, okay, what kind of society do we want? Let's make market rules to help us get there as efficiently and effectively as we can. But there's one place where the market does not work, and this is the big gap in libertarian philosophy. It does not work in the commons. Because in the commons, the air, the water, if you can just use the commons to dump your waste, you're going to do that. Or if you can catch every fish in the ocean, it's your individual economic incentive to catch the last fish and to dump all of your garbage into the water, the air, the public, because then the public pays for your production rather than you pay, and there is no market. And so what you have to have, one of the primary roles of government is to regulate behavior in the commons to make sure that there is a sustainable yield. Otherwise, there is an economic rule, which is called tragedy of the commons. And what it means is if you just let the marketplace run free on the commons, that it will inexorably destroy the commons. That in the Boston Common, if everybody could put their cow on it, the Boston Common would be overgrazed within a year, and there would be none left for anybody. So you have to regulate how many cows you can allow, how many cows each family gets there, and how many fish can you catch in the ocean. How is that done? And how much pollution you can put in the air. All of these things have to be regulated by government, and that is the biggest gap in libertarian philosophy. And it's the one thing that the Pauls, Rand, and his son don't seem to understand is that environmental laws are
well,
not.
I got to say this,
to
Bobby. They may not understand it, but certainly I think those big industries that are exercise their will and use the commons as their dumping ground, use the commons as a way to basically shift that cost to the rest of us. They understand it. I think they just don't like it.